We had been married for 8 years, and for our anniversary, I planned a trip to the coast. Something calm and romantic. Something I hoped would help us reconnect. I reserved a beautiful seaside resort with candlelit dinners, ocean views, and peaceful walks along the beach. We hadn't taken time for just ourselves in a long while, and I believed this getaway might remind us why we fell in love in the first place. 4 days, I carefully arranged every detail, from her favorite wine waiting in our room to a couple's massage on the second day. I wanted her to feel cherished again. Lately, she had seemed distant, distracted, often on her phone or lost in thought, even when we were in the same room. We arrived on a Friday afternoon. The breeze smelled of salt, and the sunlight gently warmed our faces. She smiled for pictures and even held my hand as we checked in. That gave me a bit of hope. Maybe I had been reading too much into things. Maybe she was just overwhelmed by work. Maybe both of us just needed a break. But on the second evening during dinner beneath the stars, she looked at me, her eyes clear and serious, and said, "I want a divorce." First, I didn't react. I just stared at her like her words hadn't sunk in yet. She repeated it more slowly. "I want a divorce." I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask why. Instead, I calmly took a sip of water, set my glass down, and looked directly at her. I said, "Why not now?" She blinked, her mouth slightly open, as if she expected me to beg or ask to talk about it later. But I didn't. I simply nodded, as though I had been expecting this all along. I asked her when she had started feeling this way. She told me it had been building up over the past year, that she no longer felt excited to come home, that we had grown into different people, and that she felt more like my roommate than my wife. I listened closely without interrupting as she explained how she had lost herself and needed time to discover her own path in life. She said, "You're a good man and you didn't do anything wrong. I just don't want to be married anymore." Hurt. Course it hurt. I remembered all those late nights I stayed up waiting for her. Every time I asked if something was bothering her and she said she was just tired. Every time I tried to plan something and she said she was too busy. Now I understood the truth. She had already given up, on this trip, on this anniversary. This was her way of closing the chapter. After dinner, we walked back to the hotel in silence. I could tell she felt uneasy. Maybe she didn't expect me to stay so calm. Maybe she thought I'd cry or beg her to reconsider. But I didn't. I let her walk a few steps ahead of me, like we were already living separate lives. Once we got inside, I walked to the closet, quietly packed my bag, booked the next available flight, and called a taxi. She asked what I was doing, and I told her I was giving her what she wanted. I said I was ending it with dignity, not spending another night pretending to be a husband to someone who had already stopped being a wife. When I got home, I didn't sit in the dark or relive old memories. I called a lawyer, filed for divorce, and began to cut the emotional ties. I didn't check her social media or ask mutual friends about her. I didn't send long messages or angry texts. I simply let go because sometimes letting go is the only control you have. And I chose peace over confusion, clarity over chaos. I didn't need to understand everything. I just needed to understand that I deserved better than someone who chose to leave me on our anniversary. She reached out once a few weeks later asking if I was okay. I told her I was doing better than expected and thanked her for being honest, even if it came too late. It felt strange speaking to her like a stranger, someone who once shared every part of life with me, but now felt like a chapter one had already closed. That trip was meant to be a celebration of our relationship. But instead, it became the moment I finally saw things clearly. Sometimes people don't walk away because they hate you. They leave because they simply don't feel anything anymore. And that's even more painful. But I survived. And through that quiet pain, I discovered something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Freedom. Now, when I look back on that trip, I don't dwell on the betrayal or the sadness. I remember the strength it took to say, "Why not now?" To walk away with dignity, and to begin a new chapter without someone who no longer pictured me in their future.